Right, so in this video we're going to be making one of these, which is a chopping board. So watch the video and I'll show you how to make it. Hi there, it's Bob Lad here again. You might have seen my last video on how to brew beer. We're going to do something completely different this time. We're going to be doing a chopping board. But it's going to be a different chopping board. It's going to be a chopping board that's going to have a river running through it. Now, if you've been wanting to be experimenting with making, shall we say, a river table, and you're sort of a bit twitchy about it, actually making a chopping board is actually going to be a little bit cheaper for you, a little bit easier. You'll get to get the techniques under wraps, and hopefully this video is going to help you. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making out a little chopping board, and the wood I'm using here has got what they call a live edge on it. Now the live edge is basically the outside of the tree, where the bark usually fits, and we're going to put the live edge in the middle where the river is, and each piece has got a live edge, as you can see here. Now chopping boards generally have a square edges and such like, so this has all been squared off. The wood I'm using here is actually apple wood. It's got a nice coarse grain. It's going to be really hard. It's going to take the knives and everything. You can use almost any hard wood. I would steer clear of oak if I were you. It's not the ideal wood for a chopping board. I think it's got acids in there which might react with some food, but basically beech should be a good wood to use. As I say, I'm using apple, a fruit wood. If you can get hold of it, go down to your wood yard, see what they've got, and then you'll be able to take it from there. So okay, so like I said, we've got the live edge, which is the edge with the outside of the tree, and what I've done with this, I've taken all the bark off. All the bark is taken off because that's where the resin is going to fit in the river, in the middle of the chopping board. What I've got here is I bought this wood last year with the view of making a river table, and there will be another video coming on very shortly. I've nearly finished actually the river table, of making a river table, so you'll see that the end result of a river table. But this one here, simple, cheap, an easy way to get into resin tables, chopping boards, anything you want. Okay, so as I say, I've taken all the bark off, and I've also given it a light sanding as well. The reason for that is that I want to get down to the base wood. I don't want any bark in there. It's a weak point. It also contains air. It's porous, and as you're pouring the resin, it will start to leak out bubbles, and it's what you don't really want with resin. So the first thing I've done, as I say, I did buy this wood, and I bought it in 2 planks around about sort of just under 6 foot tall. And I think I've got one of the planks around here. Yeah, I've got the plank here. After 12 months of storage, getting it to be seasoned, I did find out there was quite a lot of bad parts in there. All this here, you can probably see all that. This is all rotten wood. This is all lovely wood, but this is rotten wood here, here. And by the time I've poured the resin in it, I'll be spending too much money on resin. So I basically abandoned the pieces of wood, started on another piece of wood, which again in the next video we'll show you what it is. And I've stored the wood, and then within a couple of days I thought, I know what I'll do, I'll make some chopping boards. Okay, and at the end of this video you'll see all the chopping boards that I've made. Okay, so like I said, the wood came into us, it was all sawn up. And what we have to do is we have to get the wood flat, certainly flat on the bottom of the board. So what we're going to do here is we're going to be using a sled and a router, and it's what you'll have to do at the end anyway. So, but this is just going to get one side of the wood flat. So I'll stop the video now. I'll focus in on what we're doing down on the table here, and then we can be able to see what we're doing. Okay. Okay, so we're going to try and get this face flat. Now the face that we're going to get flat first is actually the bottom face of the chopping board, and we're going to do that because it's all wavy. We've put it on a board and we're going to machine it with a sled. What we've done is clamped it between two clamps here, just two bits of wood screwed in with some screws to push it together. Where it's rocking, I've actually put down some little bits of wood to stop it from rocking, and it's fairly sturdy. So what we'll do now is we'll pick up our homemade sled, which is here, okay, and that will slide up and down these two rails like this, okay, and on that we will put our router. Now this is a 1/2 inch router. You can use a 1/4 inch router, but the 1/2 inch router takes bigger bits, and because I've done bigger tables I'm using that. So what we'll do now is we'll have a look at getting this a little bit flatter, and once the bottom face is flat, then we'll go on to the next stage, which is getting the top face flat and then getting it down to some sort of thickness. At the moment this is fairly thick for a chopping board, but I'm going to get it a little bit thinner later on. Okay, so here we go. Now I'll do another couple of cuts on that to get it all flat all the way across, and then we'll go on to the next stage, but for now we'll just stop it. So here we have it. Just undo these here. Okay, and there we have two flat edges, and these are the underside. This is going to be the underside of the chopping board. Okay, so look at the thickness of that. We don't need it that thick for a chopping board, but you still need it to be a little bit longer and a little bit wider and a little bit thicker than what your final product will be, and that'll become obvious later on when we've done some pourings. So I'm going to take this down a little bit further. Not going to use the sled and the router. It's a little bit time consuming. I'm going to do this on a planer. Now I couldn't, sorry, it's a thicknesser planer rather than it's just a planer. If you have what I call a planer, which is a flat bed such as this with the blade in the middle pointing upwards, and you run across it like this, then you'll get a flat surface. If you're using a thicknesser, the thicknesser is the blades on the top, and as you're going through it'll follow the contour of the foam underneath, so if it's twisted it will still be twisted. There's another problem with the planer as well, which I'll come to in a minute, it's what they call snipe. So snipe on a thicknesser, what happens is as you pass the wood through, it cuts it, and as it gets to the end it kicks a little bit and you get a dinge in the end, which you can take out by sanding, but I'd rather not have it on the bottom face because I'd have to sand the bottom face. So the next thing I'm going to do is going to get it down to some sort of thickness, which I'm happy with, leaving about 5mm on, but maybe 1/4 inch on for finishing later on, and there's a reason for that which will become apparent later on. Okay, so at the moment I've got my nice 2 pieces of wood. You can see already you've got some ridges there, but we can leave those in for the time being, and you can see the loveliness of the wood already, so it's fantastic. Okay, so next stage we'll be getting down to thickness, and then we'll start making the mould. Okay, so now it comes to the time of actually making the mould that we can pour the acrylic into. So what we've done is we've cut some pieces of wood already made up. I've cut the pieces of wood here to match the width of the finished article that I want, and I've laid it on a piece of melamine, and I'm using this stuff here, which I've only started using this recently. And it was packing material from some polycarbonate roofing, and I've made a few things using this as a base, and it's never stuck to it. When you come to watch the other video with the river table, you'll find that I more or less had to destroy the whole of the melamine base to get it off. So so this is the orange stuff, pretty good stuff. Other than that, you would have to tape it or spray some sealant in, some mould release in there. But for this instance, this has worked perfectly well. So what I've done is I've got some scrap pieces of wood. I've cut them up to the sides to the width I want, and the top, and then we're going to go and seal it all in. What we don't want any leaks. We don't want all that money that you put into the resin leaking out. So the first thing we'll do is we'll give a little bit of a, actually, first thing we'll do, we'll get that piece of thing off there. I'll start again. Okay, so making the mould, what I've done is I've put a little bead of sealant down the first piece that I'm going to lay down. I'm just going to put that down there like that. Okay, that one's in. I'll just remove the actual bread, the board there, and I will put the second piece in, which is the width of the board. Make sure it's square, and then what we'll do here is give it a bit of sealant on there. You can see I've used this before. Sealant down there. Square that up like that. And so on and so forth until I've built the mould. So once I've built the mould, we'll get ready to start pouring. Okay, so we've put down the mould, sealed it all around as best we can. We've put down the board that we want to put the river in. We've put a little bit of sealant on the bottom of that as well, and we've clamped it down because it's quite thick stuff is the resin, and the board will float on top of it, so clamp it down for the moment. Okay, so now we're going to mix and pour the resin. So the first thing we're going to do, you have to do it accurately. So I'm not going to fill it to the top. I'm only going to fill a little bit in the bottom, hopefully 6 millimeters, 5-6 millimeters, something like that. So 2 parts. It's a glass cast 50, which will say it will do 50 millimeters thick, but we only want to do it 6 millimeters, and it's a bit of guesswork this, so I'm going to just put in around 100 grams of the resin, and then it's the mixture of this one is 45 grams of the hardener. So that's 145 grams. Put these down here. And the base of this is going to be ocean blue. So looks like a river. So you don't need that much. You only need a little bit of the dye. It's a powdered one, this one. It's a pearlized one as well. Okay. Now, the most important thing is, after we've got rid of this, is that we mix this thoroughly. So at the moment, it's just relatively clear, and I'm going to mix this thoroughly. So you want to get all of the resin mixed together and spend a good few minutes doing this. Now I say it's a pearlised one is this one, so it'll give a nice effect on the bottom. Now I think I've got a bit of a plan with this one, which I've never done before, which will come to fruition when we come to the next part. Okay, so keep mixing it up, go down the sides and everything, and then we'll just pour it in. Now this is, as you're doing this, you're mixing air into it, and it's not something that you really want to do with resin, put air into it. So the best way of getting the air out is sticking it in a little vacuum chamber. Well, I haven't got one of those, but this stuff is pretty good. The air will rise to the surface, and then we'll just burn it off shortly. Okay. So there we have a nice blue pearlised resin. And first you must make sure that the bottom face and everything is nice and clean. I've already done that earlier on, so there's no bits in the bottom or anything like that. Let's do a quick check at the end and what have you, especially if it's going to be a clear resin you're using. So let's start pouring it in, and it'll find its own level. Before we started pouring, I did level this all up, okay, so check the levels, but of course with this being a liquid it'll find its own level, and this stuff, if I just leave that like that, it'll all run out into the bottom. So now we've got a nice blue pearlised bottom, and it's going to be a 2-pour. Like I say, first pour is basically we're going to seal the bottom of it, but as I say, I've got a little bit of an experiment I want to do with this one. And then the second pour has to be done within 24 hours. And the way you say it's ready to be done is that, should we say after 18 hours, if you just touch the resin, and you should be able to put a little indentation into it without it sticking. If your finger sticks to it, it's not quite ready for the second pour. But in this case, I think the weather's quite warm now. Don't do this outside in winter. If you're going to pour the resin, do all your work outside, but pour your resin in a controlled temperature environment, or else it's just not going to work. It's just not going to set. The setting time for this resin is up to 72 hours. And the way you can tell it's set is, I've not got a piece here. I don't think I have. But the way you can tell it's set is if you've got a bit of an overspill or a bit that you've got left in the bottom that you pull it out. If you can bend it, it's not set. If you can snap it, it's set. So don't be tempted to start working on it if you've got that little bit of spare resin out that you've poured somewhere. If you can bend it, it's not right. So don't work on it. Give it a bit more time. Okay, so all we need to do now is, so you still got a little bit left in there. Now there's 1 or 2 bubbles that's formed on here. So what we'll do now is we'll get rid of those bubbles. And the easiest way of doing that is just putting a flame across them. And it literally is a little flame there. Now what you want to be doing is you want to be checking on 2 things. 1, that you've got no more bubbles formed, and 2, that your resin's not all leaked out down the sides, maybe underneath, down the side there. You will get a certain amount of leakage. You can usually tell because you can see it running, but at the moment it's not running. What we'll do is I'll bring the camera in a minute. You can see the colour, and what you can do is just, you know, a couple of times, if you can just want to do a couple of swirls like this. This will give it a reasonable effect. It won't stay like that, but when you see the next table which I've done, when I've cut the top off of it, you'll see the effect that's underneath. It's absolutely beautiful. As I say, you might have to wait until the next video, but this one here, because I think we're going to be doing it a slightly different way, this one here, it'll look like that for a while, and then it might just settle down. Okay, so until tomorrow when I'm going to do the second pour, and then we have to leave it then for 72 hours. We'll just leave it. Second pour, we won't be pouring it, well, we might pour it to the top, but you do get a certain amount of shrinkage. You get about a 6% shrinkage. So if you pour it to the top, when you come back the next day, it will be below the top, which is a reason why you're leaving this piece a little bit thicker than you want it, because you can machine all that off later on. Okay, so until tomorrow, I might bring that camera in and have a look at the blue, and then until tomorrow we'll just leave it. I'll probably cover it over tonight with some cloth just to stop anything, any midges getting in there or any dust getting on there. You don't really want dust in there, doesn't look very nice. It's, I say I'm curing it outside. This is underneath, it's undercover, but it is outside. The temperature's not so bad at the moment, and then of course tomorrow is going to be a warm day tomorrow, so it'll warm up as well. You can do it outside. I've done most of my curing outside, apart from the smaller items which you can cure inside. But as I say, it's summer now. I do all my board making, all my resin tables out in the summer, because basically the temperature is more controllable. Otherwise I'd have to take it in a controlled environment, which could be the house, or in the garage. The garage isn't that good, but the house, you tend to be temperature controlled. It doesn't leave a lot of odour and what have you, so you should be okay with that. You might get a little bit of heat off there when it's curing. I have had it up to 72 degrees, which was a bit too high really. But you just keep your eye on it just for the next hour or so, just make sure there's no bubbles forming, and then next it's not leaking all the way, and then we'll see, we'll take it from there. Okay. Okay, it's 24 hours now since we last put the resin in. I've checked it, it's not tacky, so it'll take the next to the resin. And as you can see, I've put some glass pebbles in there, coloured pebbles. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be filling it full of clear resin. It might not go to the very top, but everything's still clamped down. And I've just noticed, and I've never done just clear resin before, and I did just a good mix up, and this has got absolutely full of bubbles. So really I should really have a vacuum chamber to take all those bubbles out, but hopefully it'll come to the surface and I'll be able to burn them off and what have you. It's called glass cast clear, so it should be clear as actual glass. But as I say, we'll see what happens. So here we go, and you can see the colour coming through on those. Now, yeah, nice and clear. Now what I haven't done is I haven't put the pebbles right to the very end, because what I don't want to happen is I'm going to have to saw off the ends just to tidy them up, and I don't really want to have to cut into them with the saw. So there we go, that's a glass cast in. First time I've ever used it. This is the first time I've ever done something like this. Okay, it's going to look quite nice actually if those bubbles come out. That's it, it was all nicely mixed and what have you. So after burning off some of the bubbles on the top, what I'll be doing is I shall be covering it over and leaving it for 72 hours, by which time it'll be taken away, demold it, and then I can machine the top down to the right thickness, and then machine the ends and the sides and make a board. So here's to the next time. Okay, we're actually in the workshop now. A lot of the videos that we've been shooting have all been outside, basically because the workshop's absolutely full of machinery, full of equipment that I use for the other parts of what we do, which another video will be coming along shortly. But on this occasion, because all I'm doing is sanding, I'm going to be able to do it inside the workshop, on the work area. Okay, so what we've done, we squared off all the edges around here, and we put a little radius around the edge with the router on both sides. Okay, and then now we're going to start sanding. And you start off with 40 grit, and I'm going to start off with 40 grit with the belt sander, and that gets rid of most of the ripples that are in there, and probably most of the little bit of snipe on the other side. I've talked about snipe earlier on, where it goes through the planer and it just kicks a little bit, so there's a bit of snipe on the other side, a little bit of snipe on this side here and here. But this is going to be the underside. This is you can see this is the blue area here. I did have a bit of a mishap when I actually planed this down, because I use a planer on this. It will fit inside my planer, but you can still use a sled if you wanted. I'm glad I didn't use a sled, because I actually hit one of the stones had come through, so a little bit disappointed. So I've got to change the blades in the planer. Okay, so I've sort of started on the underside here, and this is the top side. Now, looks considerably different to what it did when it was just cast, because all the scratches in there, all that clearness has gone. So now we're going to have to sort of start working down from 40 grit, and then we'll go to 60 grit on the orbital sander here, 80 grit on the orbital, 120 grit on the orbital, 240 grit on the orbital, and then I'll go to 320 grit with wet and dry, 600 grit with wet and dry, 800 grit with the orbital, 1200 grit with the wet and dry, 2000 grit with the orbital, and then 3000 grit with the orbital. Now, when you're going from 40 to 80, 40 to 60 grit, you need to take a long time getting all the scratches out. You've got to get every single scratch out, so you've got to keep your eye on it all the time. Don't be tempted to sort of do a lot of the work with a 40 and then not enough work with the 60, because in the long term you'll have to go back and start again. If there's a scratch in there, you want to go back and start again. So really take your time between the 40s, the 60, the 80, and when you get to 120 grit, what I do is I get a damp rag and I damp it all over on both sides and the edges. Oh, by the way, don't forget to do the edges when you're doing your sanding. It's easy to forget, but there's no point in having a beautiful face and you've got loads of scratches down here. So do your edges when you're doing your sanding as well. Yeah. So when you're doing when you've damped it all off, first thing you'll see this becomes clear. So you can actually see what it looks like when it's going to be finished. Of course, that dries off when you're going to see the scratches. But when you get to sort of around 120, and do it every time you go between those early grits and up to, should we say 600, maybe even 800. You want to pop the grain in there. You want to get those grains sort of swelled up, so that when you take the next sanding on it, it pops them down. Okay, and you'll be able to feel it straight away. So as soon as you put the water on, you'll be able to feel it's all rough and what have you. So you really want to get rid of all that. Keep popping the grain, because you don't want to start popping the grain when you put the mineral oil on later on, because you've got to start taking it all off again. So for the time being, okay, I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to start with this, and then go right the way down to what we said before, and then we'll come back and we'll have a look at it then, and by that time we should be ready to nearly finish off. Okay, so off we go. So there we have it, all finished, polished, waxed, mineral oiled, all done now. Okay, so there's the top side, and there's the bottom side. Look at the grain on that wood, it's beautiful, isn't it? Absolutely beautiful. And it's unique, it's bespoke to you. There's no other one like this one. Fantastic as a something for yourself, for your home, and also really good for a present for somebody as well. So the thing is, how much did it cost me to make it? I've never seen a video yet where people said, oh, you know, it cost me this much to make it. So I did a costing on it, and depending on really how much resin that you buy in one go, obviously the smaller amount of resin you buy in one go, the more expensive it's going to be. So I've worked on sort of two scenarios really. So the wood cost around about £5. The resin was anything between £6 and £8. The glass beads that are in the bottom here, they were about £1.50. And then you always have consumables, which is like your polishing pads and things like that. I always had £1 in for that. Something. So, you know, anything between £14 and £16 to actually make it. But obviously that doesn't include all the labour that you put into it, which is quite a long time if you consider that, you know, it will take you in the region of sort of 4 days up to 4 days to 6 days really to make one of these. The polishing alone took me a good hour and a half, to starting off with a 40 grit, going up all through the grits, and then I had a bit of a problem. I found a scratch in there. I know it's a chopping board, and if you're doing it for yourself you might be able to say, oh, I can ignore that, it's going to get a scratch in it anyway. But I found a scratch in there, and I actually managed to go back a few pads to get it down to sort of get the scratch out and start all over again and what have you. Did I make mistakes? Yes, I did make mistakes. One of the mistakes was that the board's thinner than what I wanted it to be. It really should be a bit thicker than that one. That's because I didn't really want to mix up any more resin and pour it in, so I should have made it another few millimetres higher, 10 millimetres higher. It's a nice thick board and what have you. When I put the stones in the bottom, the blue could have been cured a little bit more, and one of the stones sank through, and I did put it on my planer and I buggered the blade up on the planer. So I need to sort of I had to change the blade on that, but that's my fault really. Now stay tuned, because there's a few more of these boards which I've made in different colours, so you can have a look at all those and what have you, and some other ideas that we've done as well. Very, very shortly we'll be coming up and showing you the river table which we've done. Nearly finished it now. I'll probably finish it off this weekend. Just got to polish it all up and put it on the frame that I've made. And that's another video we can go and show you how to do that. But it's a really good starter, because if you never used resin before, it's very worrying. It's an expensive product, but as you can see, it works out really well. It looks really nice. You know, it's something that, you know, people will say, oh, hey, where did you get that from? You know, well, I made it. And with a few tools that you need, a router, you need saws, you need that sort of thing. You don't need a planer, you don't need anything like that. You probably need an orbital sander. Sanding that by hand's pretty time consuming and tiring, and what, but an orbital sander's pretty good. So as I say, stay tuned. There'll be a series of photographs coming up next with all the other resin chopping boards which I've made, and there's a couple of other little surprises in there as well. So the possibilities are endless with it. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you very, very, very much for watching it. If you've got this far, then you've done well really, because I don't know how long the video is going to be at the end. It's probably going to be about 35 to 40 minutes. So, that's me talking too much really. So once again, thank you. Don't forget, the next video, subscribe, then you can get the next video, which is the resin river table, which is a table which is going to be going outside as well. It's not something that's going to go inside, it's going to go outside. So you can see the wood that's what I'm using for that one. And then I'll also, with that video, I'll be showing you other river tables that I've made. So again, it's another video to watch. Okay, once again, thank you very much, and we'll see you.